And again, on behalf of the Guaranteed Rate organization, we're so excited that you have chosen to join us today. So our guest is Brenda Wade, and Brenda Wade is an agent, as I mentioned, is going to sound kind of familiar to maybe some of you. You talk about somebody who got into the business, really got successful, and then decided, I'm going to go be a mom and a wife and have a different life. And then all of a sudden couldn't get real estate out of her blood. And guess what? She's back. So Brenda, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I'm awesome. So how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
So let's talk about that story. I know that you had a really successful RE/MAX office in Texas, and that's how you got into business. Let's talk about your roots and a little bit of a highlight of your career.
My dad was in construction, so I grew up on job sites with Dad. And then in my early 20s, I got my real estate license. But I had grown up in Pensacola. I was living in Texas with my husband's job had taken us there, and went into real estate. And my husband could see the reality of why RE/MAX made sense. But he said, if it makes sense, why don't we open one? You know, because ever the business guy. And so we made that decision. We opened a RE/MAX when I was 25, and it did very well. I was very fortunate to get some great agents to join us. But then I had kids and realized, okay, you can have it all, but maybe you can't have it all at once. So we kept the office a few years, and then one day I just woke up and said, I'm ready to sell the office. And so we did. We sold it, and I had to stay on contractually a year, and then we took a transfer to Atlanta with his company. And I took about 10 years off, and then got my license so that I could sell myself a house, because I'm the worst customer ever. Enough knowledge to be dangerous. And while I was selling myself a house, I had friends I started selling, and my first full year in the business with no intention. The joke at my office is that I said, I'm only going to sell myself a house. I sold between 10 and 11 million in volume that year with no business cards, no strategy, no game plan. And at the end of that year, I said to Ronnie, I'm working, you know, and he said, I noticed. What are you going to do about it? And I said, I'm either going to quit or I'm going to hire an assistant. So I hired an assistant. Within 30 days, I hired somebody and started the path that I'm on today.
So it's kind of funny. You mentioned that you had no intention to get back in. So you wanted to sell yourself a house. And I love the fact that you admit that you're the worst customer in the history of the world. I love that. But all of a sudden you've done 12 million. How did that happen if you had no marketing, no plan, no business cards, no intent?
I cut a picture out of my family picture to use, and when I would advertise, because I was listing, you know, and selling, but just friends, just people I knew from church or school or my kids, whatever. And so I just hacked off, you know, photoshopped a family picture and put that picture up, and was really just marketing, doing what I would want someone to do for my home if it was me. And that worked, you know, and I was very knowledgeable, and that showed. And so, you know, and my concern was about the customer because they were friends. So everything I was doing, I was trying to take care of them and do exactly. And, you know, doing the right things brings success, and it just brought an abundance very quickly.
I love it. So one of the things that I learned about you is that you are the master delegator. And so we talked yesterday about the fact that, you know, one of the things that you focused in on is what am I good at and what am I not good at? So that's kind of the topic for today, because you're the master of delegation. And you talked about the fact that when you realized you had to get back in, you immediately started looking for help. So what made that decision?
I had an assistant in Texas, and so I know the difference of quality of life. And my youngest child was not quite 10, I think, when I got back in the business. And so my family has always been number one. I mean, that's got to go well. And so you couldn't run carpool and do everything else and do the right thing for the customer and not have help. And so I hired the assistant. My first one did not work out. you're supposed to hire slowly and fire quickly. Well, I hired quickly and I fired quickly. I kept her about 60 days, and I knew she wasn't a fit for me. And I called Ronnie at work and said, okay, this is not working. Today's the day. I'm dumping her. What do I need to do? And he walked me through how to end a relationship and do it well. And then I started, calling people and saying, I need somebody. And I got an experienced assistant, and she was wonderful. She was definitely a foundational piece of me growing the business. She did a great job.
So what did you learn from the experience with the first assistant? Because that's what we've been told our whole life. Hire slowly, take your time. But sometimes you don't have time for that, right? You got to move quickly. So what did you learn from that first assistant?
I'm really a great delegator, as you said. I know what I want, and I wanted it now. I'm that person. I'm impatient, and so I got her as a recommendation from someone else, but she just wasn't a good fit. And because it is all about my family, and there was a lot of other pieces of the puzzle, she didn't fit the bill for me. So once I had her, then I knew what I didn't want, and so. Then going to the next person, she spoke more to my core values of who I was. She was more like me, not in the sense of having my skills, because I'm never looking for someone with what I possess. But she had core values that mirrored mine. And I would say that as a rule, everybody on my team has the character and core values. I'm hiring to that first, because I can teach you what you need to know, but you've got to be the person that I need you to be, and I have to know that you always have my back, and that I can trust you implicitly, that if you tell me something and the customer's saying something different, I know that you're telling me the truth, that we have a foundational trust level. And I have a large staff, and I have people that have been with me for, pushing 15 years now. And I know if I have any care or concern, that I can trust them implicitly, because that's a part of who they are.
As I look at your team, and by the way, it's brendawade.com. If you guys want to check out Brenda's website, nice website, by the way. There's a ton of people on your team. I mean, how did you go from having one assistant, so to speak, to this gigantic team? So I want to kind of take us on a journey of how you've really built this amazing team and this amazing business.
Well, I hired that first assistant, and she was excellent. So that second year where I had hired the assistant, we went from 10 to 11 million, somewhere in there, to 17, a little over 17 million that year. And then the next year we went to 27 million. Well, as we were, getting to that level, we knew I am a great delegator, and you get to your lid of what that person can do. So we looked for another person, and we hired another person. We got to 37 million, and before we got to, which was the next year, we needed a third person. And so we were running with me being the agent and 3 assistants. And, I hit my lid. I was at, I think, 88 transactions that year, and that was as much as I could really do and still run my family. And when I get to a painful point, when I can feel the stress in my life, I have too much going on, I would always hire, when it was like, this is crazy, and I learned to pick up on that. I didn't know it in the beginning, but when we get a little nuts, I know, okay, I can feel it. We're missing a key component here. We need another person to fill this box. And so that's kind of how we've done it.
Got it. And as you've grown, I noticed that it was still all about you focusing in. I mean, you're a great lister. You're obviously a great buyer's agent. And as you got to the point where your team was growing, and then all of a sudden, here's 2008, 2009, when the housing bubble goes to just explodes, and you're in Florida, in Tampa, in a really tough market. How did you work through that?
Well, to start with, in 2006 is really when the market changed here. We kind of changed, and I could tell it immediately because I am boots on the ground. I had brought
Mm-hmm.
on a buyer's agent, and my husband had retired. He'd taken an early package from Coca-Cola, and so because we were living in abundance. And so he left in March, and I could tell immediately that the market had changed because you could feel with the phones because like I said, I'm boots on the ground. And
Mm-hmm.
so he, immediately stepped in and said, okay, let's get some stats. And so in May of that year, I realized how much different the market really was from the year before and got statistics and started calling every one of my customers and saying, hey, the market's changed. We have got to make some adjustments. And of course, I had lived through a bad market in Texas and cut my teeth there, so I knew a terrible market and
Mm-hmm.
had done short sales there. I mean, I had lived that bad life. So immediately when that transition happened, I was ready for it. And so I started calling all of my customers and saying, let's sell. Let's do what we need to do, and let's drop your price a little bit. The first one out the door is going to be the one that's smart. And I said, in October, you're going to think I'm a genius, although it is very scary right now to make this change. And
Mm-hmm.
so, not everybody would do it because they were like, we just listed. What are you talking about? And I said, but I had a handful that said, we trust you. Whatever you say, we're going to do. And of course, I immediately had success. And
Right.
so that began my path. I was way ahead of the curve. I immediately was selling properties, and I ended up that year with, higher numbers than the year before. And that continued kind of for me. And I just was able to focus on listings because I was getting so many, and I brought on more on my buyers team because I quit doing buyers at all at that point because I really needed to give my listings all of my attention. And we began, continuing to grow through the toughest period.
I still want to ask you about your husband and the secret to Coke, but I'm going to leave that alone. So, because he had a great career with Coca-Cola. I love that. But speaking of your family, as you fast forward a little bit, your kids are all grown up, but you still see them every day.
I have a wonderful life. I get to see my kids every day. They're in the office. One is my, marketing director, and one is my listing partner. And I enjoy them so much. And Ronnie, my husband, is the backside of the house. I had somebody refer to that recently, and he doesn't ever come, get in the front, but he runs financials. Our office manager, Sue, he and she speak this secret language of Excel spreadsheets, and
Right.
they're constantly going back and forth about what needs to change in the financial world. So they run that side, and one's running marketing, one's doing listings with me. So it's a wonderful life, and I have really good friends on my team. So
Right.
I always think they're never going to be able to get me out of here because it's too much fun when we get here, right?
I love it. I love it. All right, let's focus on your son, Austin. You told me a great story about this, and I think this is a perfect thing for all of us to learn from, is that, Austin is your son, who you mentioned is your listing partner, and showed a little interest in the business, but you brought him along at kind of very methodically. So let's talk about what your thoughts were with having him take over this part of the business and how you actually brought him up to speed.
I have always thought your listings is my meat. It's the bread and butter, and so I've always been very protective of that. It's always been me. But I was getting to my lid again. As I told you, when I get to a painful place, I know that it's time to bring on that next person. And so he was in another career. He was in law enforcement and, had gone to college for it. It was his dream to be a federal agent. But he got married. And so that's not as great a career. Not only does your mother not love it, your wife probably doesn't love it. So
Right.
he had gotten married, and I was at that pain where it was clear I needed to bring someone on. And so I called him and said, hey, look, it was always my desire that it would be you, but it's today. It's now, or I need to hire someone. And so he said, well, give me a few months, and he would come in and just kind of see how the environment was going to be. And he took about 3 months, and then he said, okay, I'm going to do it. And he and his wife discussed it, and because it's always scary to dive into that family dynamic. And he resigned and came on full time. But I told him, you have my name. You have to do it at my level. So for a full year, he went on no appointments. He just went with me. Everywhere I went, he went, whether it was an appraisal, a listing appointment, whatever it was, he did. He totally shadowed me for a full year. And as life would have it, a year later, my dad got sick. And as I told you, it's all about family for me. That's always going to be first. And so I immediately was on a plane and out of here. And they covered me. My team and Austin stepped in beautifully because he was well trained at that point. And he would send me texts when I was by my dad's hospital bed that said, hey, guess what? You need to retire. I just took 4 listings today. We've got you here. And, that was very reassuring. And really what the whole team concept is about is knowing that in your times that you can't do it, someone else is going to be standing right there to do it for you. And it just, was the perfect launching pad for him that I had stepped aside and he could step right up and prove, yeah, I've got this, no worries. And so the next year, my dad came and stayed with me to recover along with my mother, and we had our best year ever. And, just Austin stepped in, and I was still able to work. My team was amazing. Those were the darkest days of my life. And the people that work here and Austin really stepped up big time.
So if I'm listening to you today, obviously I may not have a year to bring up someone new to the business. I may not have it, but I know that I need to add somebody to my team. The one thing that I heard that I keep going back to, and you said this a couple of times now, you said, you have my name, you have to do it my way. I think that is so critically important. You also mentioned the fact that these are my values. These are the things that I do. How do you, obviously your son understands who you are and what you're all about, but if you're coaching one of the agents that might be joining us today, how would you have them bring somebody that they want to hire to that same level?
Well, first off, you just know who you are. And from the very, very first person that I ever worked with, I've always said, take care of the customer and the customer will take care of you. I have always elevated them first. And I know that if there's a problem, we need to fix it. And it's got to win for the customer. And my whole team knows that. I mean, from the minute you're here, and I tell my buyer's agents, I'm going to sell this buyer's house eventually. And I want them to know everything that I'm going to tell them at my listing appointment before they ever buy the house. So I'm constantly training that into them, that this is very important to me, that your buyer buys very, very well. And they have the information that I have learned. And if you have any doubts about a house, you call me, let me look at it, and I'll tell you what I know. Because you have to realize how much feedback I've received in my lifetime of selling houses. I know a lot about what the buyers going to say. And when I walk into a listing, I can tell you what the buyer's agent's feedback is going to be because I've gotten so much feedback. And of course, my Austin, when he came on, he was reading that feedback every day, just like I do. I mean, we are focused on what's the consumer saying. And so I'm training them based on what we know. And when we go into a listing, we preview all of our listings. And with my buyer's agents, I'm talking about it. What's the pluses? What's the minuses? What do they need to know? Because I'm a firm believer that someone can know everything about the house and they'll still buy it. Because if it's the right house for them, they'll buy it. But let's tell them that up front. Let's make sure they understand what's the pros and cons to this house. And so as a team, you couldn't walk into my office and not know who we are, because we're reinforcing it daily. And from the receptionist all the way, up to me. I mean, it's constantly being talked about what we want, and we want the right thing for our buyers and sellers, and that's for them to be informed and educated. And, the benefit of working with us is that I have a lot of knowledge and am constantly, telling it, and like I said, when Austin came on, and now he'll tell you, I mean, he knows what I think because he went around with me, all year, and that's 200 plus listing appointments. I think this year we've done between 300 and 400 listing appointments. So when you're going on that number of appointments, you're hearing a lot of feedback to a consumer, and he knows how I'm direct. I tell them, this is the facts, and what are we going to do with that information? But if you train them, they can't help but know it. And my buyer's agents know it. And when a new buyer's agent comes on, my buyer's agents are such a strong team. And so they're helping each other, and they're telling them, so their texts are flying between each other. And as I mentioned, my first buyer's agent still works on our team. So she's been here 13 years. And, my second one came in '07, and so she's been here, over 10 years, and they're constantly communicating what they've learned, which is a lot. And so hopefully we do a good job of that.
So I know that when we talked earlier, then as you decided to get in the business, you hired an assistant, and then I know you hired a couple more assistants. When you finally decided that you needed a buyer's agent, I know that you were very particular as you have built your team. What did you look for? What were the qualities that you found in the buyer's agents that you hired?
You'll find that I hire people I know. And a lot of people will tell you not to do that. Don't hire family, don't hire friends. Actually, I do just that. And so the person that I hired for a buyer's agent had been one of my buyers. And and I had talked about her getting her license, and she had gone to work for a builder. And she's just dynamic, great, energetic. And so I was very busy. I had taken my son to college, and it was his first year, and I mean, my phone is blowing up. And so I just called her and said, it's now. You've got to do this. You've got to make the jump for me. And, I want you, just kind of the same thing that I did with Austin. It's like, I need you, and you're my first choice. Will you take it? And she said, let me talk to Ed. It's a big deal, and so she came back and said, yes, she would. But I already knew her. We think alike, and she's very much filled with character, and she oozes talent when you talk to her. So I knew that she would be a great fit. And then as I've hired the next one, and I were spending time negotiating contracts, and it was when the market was tight, and I was still selling houses and I think she just knew, I'm not loving this listing side where you're having to constantly drop bad bombs. What if I come on with you and I'll do your buyers? And so that was a perfect fit. And I already knew her. I had worked with her. She was magnificent. And I will tell people all the time, she's one of the best buyer's agents you will ever find anywhere. And I'm fortunate enough that she's here. And just that the doors would open, and I get approached a lot, and I only have 7 buyer's agents, which when you look at last year, I only had 6. I brought a new one on this year. So last year we closed over 400 transactions, and it was about 40% of that was buyers, maybe 160 transactions, and 6 people did that. And so that's pretty great numbers. And then Austin and I do the sellers. So those were, telling you that they're all hustlers, they're all hardworking, and their buyers that they work with love them. They do a great job.
So are they you?
In what way?
In other words, are they mini Brendas? Are they? How do you train them? How do you make them buy into that? It's my name. You have my name. You have to be what you have to do. What I say. How do you get them to that level of being you trusting them with representing you to your clients?
Well, I don't hire inexperienced agents. I hire experience, and
Hmm.
because I don't have a training mechanism, and I've passed on some really good people through the years because they were brand new, and I knew they were going to be great, but I don't have the mechanism to train them at this point. Hopefully, in the future that will happen, but and I want them to be good. So I'm very particular about who I will hire. And again, it comes to that core value. Who are you? Do you understand that it's about the customer? And even though you may really need the money, you can't make it about you and what you need. You have to make it about what they need. And they all know I'm always looking. I'm always watching every sale to say, was that a good buy? Why did you sell that house? What was good about it? And they have to be able to defend it to me. And they know that from the beginning. I'm very feet in, and so they collectively are saying, "What do you think of this house? What would Brenda say?" And they're going to the top of the food chain, which those experienced agents. The one that I hired first is such a little educated consumer. She's reading, 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 and I mean they're always talking among themselves because when you hire to that culture and that character, you get great people. And so they're
Hmm.
always wanting to do the best thing for their customers, and it just shows. And so, yes, they are mini me's, but with lots of different personalities, but their same goals are there.
Got it. I love that. You have to be able to defend it to me. I mean, that you have to be able to defend it to the client too. So that's a perfect approach. I love that. That's a key point that I want everybody to make sure you heard that. You always have to be able to defend it to the client, which means you have to defend it to me. I love that. All right. So we've talked about your buyer's agent. Your son Austin's helping you with listings. You're doing listings. Let's talk a little bit about technology. Let's talk a little bit about social media. And oh, by the way, there's another person by the name of Allison that helps you with your marketing.
Yeah. Well, and I would say one of the great things about our team is that we have young and we have experience. And I tell everybody when I hire them, you're so lucky to get to, if you're working in the office side, you're so lucky. You're getting your master's degree right here. I have such wisdom on my team. I have great, strong women that work here that are smart and savvy and, again, just core values so well. If you're a mom and you knew you could come plop your 22-year-old that had just finished college in a seat in my office and get to have them being mentored by these strong females, you would be so excited because they're such great human beings and
Mhm.
great employees, great friends. And do such a great job for our customers. And so they teach these young ones so much. And then the young ones come in so smart and techo and, teaching us so much. So it's a give and go between the two generations, if you will. And it's worked so successfully for me. When I see people, making snide comments about a millennial or whatever, I'm like, send them to my office because we've had such success with them. They just do great things and they know so much, and we can take a project and turn it over to them. I was in a local store with Allison one day, and my listing manager was in there, and of course at that time I wasn't hiring for the listing manager, but I said, wasn't she smart in school? And Allie said, oh yeah, she's very smart, very organized. And we hired her right there out of the store, and she's amazing. She does great, great work for us. And, we can turn to her for projects and technology. If we need to get things done, she can do it. And yet she's picked up those great customer service skills that my team is known for because it is all about the customer. Allison is young. She's doing our marketing and, always doing great things on social media. We get good engagement on our social media and, she's trying to grow. We've, turned from Facebook to Instagram. We still do Facebook at a good level. And she started our Instagram page this year and is building followers on there and building content. And so that's worked well. We still do a lot of print media, and so she coordinates those ads and is designing things for us. And so that's been a good fit because again, she already knows who we are and what we're doing, and communicates well with our staff.
I just want to make sure that I made that clear that Allison is your daughter and is your marketing director.
Yes.
So you intrigued me because you said two words that I haven't heard in forever: print media. Really? So let's talk about that. Are you having some success with it?
We've had print media for a long time, and actually when the market changed back in '06, when most of our friends were pulling money off the table, we were pushing money on the table and doing advertising and being creative to try to drive traffic to our listings, and it worked. And print media has worked. We are very focused into a local marketplace, and so we have different areas that we do it in. We have several local newspapers. We have, that are publications for neighborhoods. We have some high-end magazines that we use, and we still sell. We're very much track-oriented, if you will. Whenever somebody's coming into our office, we know where the lead is coming from, and if it didn't work, we wouldn't do it. So it still works, and I'll tell people, in this day and age, a lot of times there's more parents buying houses for kids or helping kids than you've ever seen. And so I'm in a neighborhood where we have a lot of snowbirds that come down and maybe stay a month or 3 months in the winter with their kids. And while they're there, I can always tell when I'll answer the phone, they're asking questions. I'm thinking, this person's going to buy this house. And they've called off my print media. And sure enough, they'll say, well, listen, I'm calling for my daughter. I'll call you back. And it's mom and dad that are making a decision to go ahead and invest in their children and their grandchildren's education, get them into a better school district. And they're either buying it in a trust, they're putting in a down payment, maybe they're agreeing to buy a larger house and they'll have part of it for when they winter here. And so a lot of folks that still control the budget, they sit around the table and drink coffee and read the newspaper. So it still works for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And I forgot about the fact that you do have an older and very mobile population, so to speak. So that's really important. You mentioned the fact that you're moving, kind of drifting from Facebook over more toward Instagram. Can you talk a little bit about that move there?
Well, we're still doing Facebook. We're very strong on Facebook, and we have great engagement. And, Allie's always looking for some new things to boost, and we do a lot of things in our community. We are givers. We do drawings throughout the year to recognize that different days. We do a teacher focus before teachers go back to school. We do Veterans Day focus. In Thanksgiving and Christmas time, we are totally trying to focus on, this is our time of the year to be grateful because we've had a great year. So we give back a lot. We look for local charities, and Allie, works in tandem with them to create, feedback for them, engagement for them, and we'll help them develop social media campaigns, and then also uses it on our Facebook. But the younger generation has definitely drifted to Instagram. If you're looking for those millennials, a lot of them very rarely post on Facebook. So they're going to Instagram. So Allie is definitely focusing on that. So we'll still achieve that. But we haven't given up Facebook. We're still there, and our engagement is pretty good. And our customers very much love it with what we're doing and what they can see we do with their houses. We're, advertising, sponsoring posts, and we're targeting in different areas. So, she definitely kind of develops a strategy for each listing.
Right. A couple of things I want to hit on here. Let's talk about, you are very involved in your community. You mentioned the teacher recognition, the veteran recognition. You guys do a lot of philanthropy there. So I know that it's very important to you, and it's not always business related for you. You're very deeply rooted in these communities. So talk about some of those efforts that you do and some of the things specifically you do to boost your community.
Well, right now we're working with Seeds of Hope, which is a local food bank that is driven by our community. It's somebody had a dream that it would incorporate our kids that work in our area schools, and they do backpacks for our underprivileged schools. So not necessarily the school that they are, but they take it to other schools in the area that have a different population. And so they take and fill these backpacks on Friday with these kids so they'll have food all weekend. So, you know, the teachers and social workers identify kids in those communities. And so we support that. And it's done by our junior and senior high kids are actually running it. So they're getting community service hours, getting to touch people that might be outside of the bubble that they live in. And then the other family is getting to receive. So we love that, and, you know, love that. And so we're very involved in that. We try to be year-round, and we sponsor races that they do to raise money. And we do a promotion every Thanksgiving, you know, season in November to do give back. And so that's one of the ones that we focus. And you'll see that we have a campaign that we raise money with our business partners, and Guaranteed Rate is one of them, that we have them come in and speak to us on one day. Our team sets aside a day, and we have different people that we do work with all year, and they come in and make a donation to Seeds of Hope, and we in turn match it. So at the end of the day, we raised between $12,000 and $13,000 this year. We raised about $6,000. And then we matched it. And so we were able to give Seeds of Hope almost $13,000. So we do that in November every year. And that's very successful for us. But like I said, we're doing other things all year long with looking for ways to help them and other, you know, there's the kids' place in our community that we've been active with. So we're constantly looking for folks that we feel like meets our core values again, and is trying to help people with a hand up and a hand out.
Got it. By the way, here at Guaranteed Rate, we just came off of a tremendous food drive, almost 140,000 pounds of food nationwide. In the last 5 years, Guaranteed Rate has provided more than 1 million meals, and I'll tell you get emotional, you get so excited. You know, and sometimes you forget about the business part when you're so actively involved in your community, and I love that about you and your family and your team. But one of the things that you've kind of been fighting a little bit is that you've been in that little one part of the community, and you're thinking that maybe you'll expand a little bit. So let's talk about your expansion plans and why you've kind of focused in on your individual community.
Well, when I was just getting back into the business, when I told you I had no intention, it was very easy for me to stay very focused. And somebody would call me outside of the area that I really wanted to serve. I would, you know, it was very clear to me, I can't help you because I'm going to help you at a very high level, and I'm not able to do it unless I stay right here. And so if you wanted to look all over town, if you were a reload buyer, I'd have to say, I really can't help you because I'm going to do business right here, because at 3 o'clock, I've got carpool. And I knew what my limitations were. And so by knowing what I could and couldn't do and being able to clearly have my boundaries defined, because my family did come first and still does, I could clearly say I want to do a great job with everybody I help, and I can't help you and to help you to that high level. So I do all of my business. I would say, maybe I shouldn't say all, because we do have buyers that are outside of our area and occasionally a listing, but I would say 90% of our business is in a 10-mile radius. We are, and I would say the majority of it's within a 5-mile radius. And we know the neighborhoods inside and out. When you call me and you start talking about a house, chances are I know it or I've seen it. And so it makes it really easy. And I've made my life here. I've gone to church here. My kids are here. We grew up there. We never go in a restaurant that we don't know somebody that's there. It's very small town feeling, even though we're in a nice sized city. And so as my life has changed, my kids are now grown and they're in my business. We've said, okay, we're going to do a little bit more. And so we're able to expand a little bit, and we're doing market research on exactly which territories that we are going to be able to service at our level, because that's the key for us. Is I want to do a great job. If you're in my life, I want you to feel like, you know, you've got exceptional service and that I know you. It's a personal thing for me. And so we're focused on what is best for the customer, and that we'll let that guide where we go.
I love that. Always maintaining the service level so you know where your bread's buttered, so you stay in that area. I love that. A couple of things. You're uber successful, and I need to get back to some of the basic things that you have done. And I know that your team is critically important, but let's face it. You're the foundation of your organization. So let's talk about the questions that everybody always asks. So what do you do with Zillow and Trulia and all the online sites? Are you guys using those? How are you handling them? How do you funnel that to your buyer's agent? What's your strategy there?
We have participated with Zillow as a premier agent for many years. We invested more, maybe a couple years ago. We put more money into Zillow and have had a good return. When they changed their algorithm earlier this year, I was screaming Mimi about that because it wasn't working for us. And I went to their conference in Las Vegas in November and said it's just not working, and I'm a tracker, and because I'm very hands-on in my business, I could tell you. And I was sitting there with my rep going, let me show you my leads, let's talk. And they did. They changed it right after that. So you've got to give them props, because when there are people that were paying them complain, they made some changes. It's not a large portion of my budget, but it is a portion of my budget. And I track, as I said. We're looking at what works for us. And Sue is a spreadsheet wicked woman, and so I can go to her and say, Sue, how many closings am I getting? What is happening here? What happened at the first of the year when that transaction started changing? What happened? So we do print media, we do Zillow. We are Boomtown customers. We were with Tiger Leads for many, many years, and they sunsetted this year. And at that point, we made a choice to go to Boomtown. So we, have a good CRM for the team members that work with us. But by and away, when you are a lister, I'm a strong listing agent, we get phone calls on our signs. And, right. And when you've been around as long as we have, we are big proponents of staying in touch with your customer, and we have a great repeat referral business that comes from our previous customers.
I got it. Referral repeat is so important. Now, you mentioned get calls off your listing signs. Doing open houses?
We do open houses, and we do sell them, and I love it when other agents, when the market was tough, so many agents at that point, you would hear they're dead, and I would just laugh, because sometimes when people will tell you what's dead, it's what they don't want to do anymore. And exactly. I've sold many houses at open houses, and many times, when I'm sitting in open house, another agent's buyer will walk in, and for some reason this house didn't meet their qualifications, so it didn't get shown, not through any cause of the buyer's agent. It was just that it was outside of what they said. And that old saying, buyers are liars. They tell you what they won't do, and then they walk in it and they go, this is it. And wife goes, but you said, and he goes, no, this is it. And so the agent will get a sale off of my open house, and we're happy for that to happen. We love working with the other agents in our area. And so we sell a lot of houses for other agents. We sell a lot of our own houses. And so we're very happy with what open houses do for us.
So what's your strategy with open houses? What do you do? How do you set them up? How do you host them? What's your plan there?
We advertise them on, anywhere online that we can. We'll advertise in the newspaper still, although we're phasing that out. We're seeing less, because we track when they come in. Where did you see us? What did you do? We put up signs on Friday to direct traffic so they can know, hey, Brenda's having an open house this weekend. So if they're riding through the neighborhood and they see it, they know, oh, I can see that on Sunday. And we find that is successful. I know that other agents will door knock and all around it. We have not had to go to that level to get a good turnout. And by the marketing that we do online, usually we'll drive it.
Got it. One of the things I keep hearing over and over from you, and I absolutely love this because I'm a huge proponent of this, you know your numbers. You know your numbers, you track your numbers, you work toward your numbers. And I know you have great support and spreadsheet gurus, but I get that you have a sense of where you are and what's happening. How do you keep on top of your business like that?
My husband will recap it. And it's funny that when he first did this, in the beginning, I remember one year he sent me numbers, and it was like the 1st of June, and he said, "You're never going to cycle your numbers for July." And he goes, "Your last year, July, was killer." And I was like, I'm so competitive within myself, and that freaked me out. I mean, and so the next day I'm telling him, "Don't ever do that to me again. I can't stand that. I've been awake for days, thinking about these numbers that you're giving me, because I will cycle July. It's just June 1st. I'm going to be fine in July." And, but it was like, oh my gosh, what are you doing to me? And because I'd never been that way, really, my business grew very organically. I didn't have a goal. I just had a goal to take care of the customer. I wasn't driven by, "You've got to sell this amount," or my goal was always about the customer. So he came, from this other environment, and he started going, "This is how you judge your success. You have to cycle, and you have to get and improve." And I'm like, "What the heck? Stop it." And so he started feeding me that, and then he would say, "Okay, I won't send it to you, but here it is." And so he'd start putting it, and then a couple years later, he got me addicted to it, and we were redoing a house at the beach, and so he wasn't, as involved. He was focused on that house, and I called him. I go, "You haven't sent me numbers." He goes, "What are you talking about?" I go, "I need to see my numbers. What's going on?" And so he goes, "Oh, I'll see if I can put them together today." And because I got addicted to them, once you have it and you realize, you have to cycle those numbers. You have to see where you are. And he's constantly telling me where I am year to date. So he'll give me a synopsis constantly of, are you better on volume? Are you better on units? Are buyer's agents doing well? Are you doing well? Austin, kind of telling me where everybody's at. So he recaps it. He knows what I need, and I just review the short version instead of the long version.
And then the second part of that is you track your efforts. I mean, you ask people where they heard of you. I mean, that's so critically important. So what's your strategy there with making sure that you're finding out what's working and what's not?
Well, because, the world evolves and the business evolves, and, all the time. I mean, I came in this morning and sat down with the girls and said, "Hey, one of the tools that we're using, do you think we're getting the results on that we should? Is there another tool at this point? Are we wasting money?" And I trust them, and I have this really great team that's always evolving, and I travel to learn from other people. I have great friends that are all across the country that have been so good to mentor me. And so when they learn something new, they're sharing it with me. And then I go to conferences, and I'm just always trying to improve what we do. And so when, 3D Matterport came out several years ago, we were one of the first ones to implement it. We bought the camera immediately and figured out a way to bring that into our business. And we learned it from someone else. And, they said it is working. So very quickly on, we implemented. So we're constantly looking to be cutting edge on what is going on, but we know who to trust. And so because I know a lot of other top agents, they're giving me what their results are early on. And so we can, implement that in our business.
All right, let's focus in on, and we're getting tight on time here, and I got so much more I want to talk to you about. So anyway, let's focus in. Everybody wants to be the greatest listing agent ever. They only want to do listings. And you obviously have captured this marketplace. What would you say the one or two or maybe even three things that I should focus on as an agent to make sure that I am winning that listing appointment? Number one, getting the listing appointment, and then winning that appointment. What are my focuses on being a great listing agent?
You got to add value. I mean, and a lot of that is knowledge. I mean, if somebody's going to pay me the big bucks, and I'll tell them that, I better know something. I better have some information to add. And I'll tell them, I may not know this, because if I were sitting in the kitchen and knew all the answers, I tell them I wouldn't be at the kitchen table. I'd be on TV. So, bear that in mind, that I do have a limited, but I'm very well educated on what's changing in the marketplace. I know what I think and why. I can tell them what's happening and what I think is going to happen next. And just like I told you in May of 2006, I had some news for them, and that news held true all the way through, that I knew what was going on, and I gave them a path. And I told them what's going to change. When I walk in the door of a listing, I'm looking for what's going to be the pluses and the minuses. I had a customer that one day he laughed at me because he's a very successful insurance guy and is used to sales. And I walked in the door, and I walk in the door telling you how it is. I'm very very bossy, if you will, but in a sweet kind of way. But, I'm telling you, if you want top dollar, here's what you're going to have to do, da-da-da. And he goes, who is this chick telling me what, and then he thought, but I guess I'm going to pay you a lot of money to do that. I better listen. And so I know, I've learned. I've spent a lot of dollars on education. I'm constantly learning more. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm reading books. I'm staying in touch with the news and the financial markets. I have people that I trust that I ask questions to if I don't understand something, so that when I'm having a conversation at the kitchen table, I'm knowledgeable. And so that is first and foremost. Be educated. Know your market. Don't walk in blind. Look at the studies. And it's funny because as I've brought on these younger agents, it's interesting to watch them. They go and research, man. Before they're showing up at an appointment, they know what's sold. They know details. And you're competing with them. So you have to be at least as good. My marketing's good. I'm known in my marketplace for it. And my results are outstanding if you look at what I do for my customers. So I can lean on that and I can show it. And so that's what you need to do is when you're working, you need to realize you're working to build a resume. And I'll tell my customer, my goal is to get you the most money because it makes me look good. And I can go in and show where I do that repetitively. And so you have to do that as well. You have to build a resume of business that you can say, look what I've done. And it was all about you, the customer, because that's really where your business is going to live or die, is what you do for that customer.
Speaking of customers, buy side, on the other side of that, I know that you have a great relationship with your guaranteed rate loan officer, Todd Martin, but how do you manage the process on both sides of the transaction? I know every great agent I've ever met controls everything, and I love that. What's your pattern, and how do you control the process?
Well, we're systematic, if that's what you're asking. I mean, we are very definitely, we use Trello. I don't know, that's been great for us because everything's online. I can go in at any time and look and see where we are on any transaction and love it. Just pull it out my phone. I can see where we are. So when my customer's calling me at 9:30 at night panicked, I can see exactly what was done. I have full notes between that and our CRM. And, so we are definitely driving from this is what we do and why. And I know why we do every step. And occasionally something will change. Somebody will have moved something because they had the thought. And I'm always like, no. We don't move anything that I don't know about because I am on top of it. And, that the systems, you have to have them in place if you're going to repeat a excellent process time after time.
You mentioned CRM a couple of times. What do you use?
We have used Top Producer from the beginning, and Sue, my office manager, developed spreadsheets, and then we found a way to implement all that in through Trello. And so we keep our customer base through Top Producer, and we're using Trello to chase all of our deals.
Got it. Trello's an interesting software, and I'm glad that you've got those two to work together because that's really, really important. All right, a couple more things here, real quick, as we wrap up here. What do you see happening in the marketplace? We're seeing all this stuff about, home sales are going to go crazy, bad, and the market's going to be terrible, and oh my gosh, doom, gloom. I don't hear that from you. What's your forecast for what's ahead?
Well, I think this year we saw rates go up, and I think that it takes a minute. So if you're sitting in a house and, you're at 3.25, 3.5, you're going to have to really think long and hard about whether the move at 5% was worth it. Now, Todd sent me a spreadsheet that said 4.5. And when he sent that, I was like, whoop, 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 that's exciting. And I posted on my Facebook page to say, I just saw 4.5, guys, let's go buy a house. And so I think that gives some people some pause. So if you didn't need to move, you just kind of were thinking about it, you might go back in your hut. I think Florida is still got 1,000 people a day moving to Florida. So we have a strength here that maybe in all areas they don't feel, but we did. And so when I'm at conferences, I'm hearing people from Canada, Denver, all over really, Chicago. They're kind of soft, and we definitely have some pockets that have softened, but that typically happens this time of the year. So, our numbers inventory-wise are still pretty, saying we're short of inventory. And so if you're, in a certain price point, you can see that there might be some softness there, but I'll need to go through the spring before I'll say that. In March, April, May, I'll be able to give you better predictions when I can tell what my phone's doing.
All right, got it. A couple of questions that I want to get to in the questions box real quick, and we're right at the edge of our time frame here. Do you survey your clients after okay?
Everyone. I write them all a handwritten note and ask them to, give us feedback on how we did. And because I appreciate it. When we're doing good, I want to tell everybody here, we're doing great. You did a great job. I want, who they loved to be recognized. But when there's an area that, someone might come back, it's very rare, but occasionally someone will come back and tell me something. And I'll call them and tell them, hey, you know what? I appreciate that you gave me this feedback, because I know it would be much easier just to say you were great and move on. And but I really grow from bad feedback. If someone can really tell me what I'm doing wrong, I can definitely fix it. And I know that sometimes you learn more from those hard conversations than you're ever going to learn from those easy ones. So I take it. I love the good, but I learn from the bad.
I love that. We use something here at Guaranteed Rate called our Net Promoter Score. We constantly check that to make sure we're doing well. And that's how we've maintained a 95% customer satisfaction rate. I love that. And I love that your customer satisfaction rate is through the roof. That's amazing. All right. You mentioned podcasts. You mentioned books. Give me a favorite podcast. Give me a favorite book as we wrap up here.
Patrick Lilly has the podcast that I've listened to, and I love it. And he has people that I love on there. And so I listened to that one. And my book, The Compound Effect, is
Darren Hardy.
Great book. I mean, and when we read it as a team, I think it was life-changing. I'm reading Brene Brown, Dare to Lead, right now, and my daughter was the first one to read, not that one, but another one of her books, and goes, Mom, you need to read this book. It's so you. And so then we saw her when we were at the Zillow conference, and so when I started reading it, she wrote it for me. It's okay. We're constantly reading, books as a team, but those two, I think right now would be great for anybody that's listening.
So Compound Effect is a great book. Darren Hardy is amazing, and the fact that, and I won't get too much into it because I want you to go read the book, but the thing about it is that, one of the things he talks about is if you want to be great, when do you start? And here's how you start, right? So it's just such a great motivation book for our time and what we're going through. So I think that's perfect. Your insight has been wonderful. I can't thank you enough for what you brought to our presentation today. Again, it's BrendaWade.com. That's Brenda spelled normal, and then WADE.com. And one of the things I want you to do, though, which is a really cool thing, I want you to go onto our website and then click on Meet the Team, and then just scroll down through and look at this amazing team that Brenda has put together. And if you think about the one point that I keep going back to is that, you have to know what you want, you have to understand your core values, and you have my name, you have to do it my way. I think those are great tools for building a team. So Brenda, thank you so much for joining us today. There's a ton of tools for you to help you grow your business, and we are all about helping you grow together. So thanks for joining, everybody. We appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.